Hey everyone, Rindo here, and I'm back again with a new episode of Living It Up in Lion City. I know it's been a while since I last posted one. Life has been busy. I've been moving house, I've been doing a bunch of other things, and now I finally have time to get back onto the podcast. I have a couple episodes in the backlog that still needs editing, and I will put them out in due course. In the meantime, here's an episode from a conversation that I had with a friend a couple of months ago. I met up with Hafiz, a redditor that I talked to in episode 13, and we kind of continue our conversation from the last time and talk about my new favorite hobby, which is bashing colonialism. So enjoy, guys. Hey everyone, welcome to yet another awesome episode of Living Up in Lion City, a podcast where local informers sit down, chill, and have a chat about everything to do with this amazing island city. Is it island city or
City state.
city state? Yeah,
Island city state, yeah. I mean, it's,
All good. So this episode, we have with us a guest who's returning, who's he has featured in a previous episode. Hafiz. Hello, Hafiz. Welcome
hello,
again.
hi Rindo. Nice to meet you again.
So it was awesome having a conversation with you the last time. The things that you talked about Munshi Abdullah, about the bicentennial discussions that are happening in the country in general. It was very enlightening, and I was really glad to have that conversation with you. And I do recall that the last time around there was so much more that needed to be said, and that's why you're here so that we can talk about the other things that are going on with
Yeah.
history of Singapore.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we can actually cover everything, but I mean, maybe just the highlights.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to go through. Yeah.
So I recall in one of the conversations on Reddit specifically, where you mentioned that there's something about colonial architecture, and just could you refresh my memory? Was it something to do with colonial architecture being a prominent part of Singapore, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, especially in the fabric of Singapore's architecture. Especially when you look into the colonial buildings.
Yeah.
When the British came over to Singapore, they wanted to stamp their how do you call it? Just the authority. They wanted to stamp the authority in Singapore. And what they did is by building all these monumental, huge civic district buildings that are actually not really scaled towards normal humans, but these are gargantuan. These buildings, if you see all the buildings like the Victoria Theatre, City Hall, Parliament Building, all of these are actually pretty big, huge colonnades and stuff. And it's actually interesting to see that these things are all artificially made. These are in the style of the neoclassicism architecture, and they wanted to make it seem so alien that these are like what you can say.
Did they want to show that
Yeah.
we are capable of building these massive edifices?
Exactly, but they wanted to replicate things like the classical architecture of the past.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, if you've seen pictures of buildings in construction, they actually had steel structures inside to actually prop up the building. So these are not actually huge classical buildings with the colonnades all made of stone or whatever,
Right.
but they're actually modern techniques being used to create these buildings.
Okay.
So the style itself, the urban design of the civic district is it's kind of like copy pasted from other places.
Yeah.
I think Iran used to have this kind of huge esplanades where there's a huge plain, empty plain, and then you have buildings that are surrounding this plain.
Right.
Yeah, civic buildings are designed in that way in Singapore as well as in other places like that. I believe in India as well as in Penang.
I'm guessing it is the colonial influence.
Yeah,
I'm not sure because okay. So could you just take me through like what do you mean by a civic district? Is it like a square?
yeah, there's gonna be a square where there's a huge plot of land that's left untouched,
Right.
as well as the buildings, government buildings, basically surrounding that square.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, anyone who comes in will be like, surrounded by all these buildings. Government
Right.
buildings are like built in a scale that's bigger than the normal human. So it's gonna be a little bit intimidating to people who are not used to this kind of architecture, which I believe a lot of the people in Singapore are not used to.
Right.
So yeah.
So you're
yeah,
saying that the British were like, hey guys, hey you common folk, we're bigger than you.
Yeah, exactly.
You
I
know?
mean, look, we are in charge. So this is us. This is our footprint. We're gonna build this in the middle of where a lot of Singapore people. I mean, people of Singapore were already there.
Right.
So I mean, they're just gonna plop themselves there and
Right.
say that I'm the ruler now. And yeah, it's interesting to see, especially how they planned the urban design of Singapore back then. I think it was in 1822 that Raffles came out with the plan, the Raffles Town Plan, I think.
Right.
I'm not sure. Have you heard of it?
So my understanding of that plan was that this is where he decided that people of different ethnicities are supposed to live in different places.
Yeah, correct.
That's the only thing that I know.
Yeah. In effect, that was it. That was what he wanted. He wanted some sort of order so that in terms of like census taking and administration purposes, it's easier for them. But Singapore was not. Singapore was already a multicultural society back then.
Yeah.
Even back then. So I mean, he tried to put people in boxes, but if you can actually see the maps, we actually had temples and mosques beside each other. In this area in Tanjung Pagar, which is kind of like it's right in the face of like people trying to put us in boxes, but we were already kind of living together in harmony back then.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that was the attempt in like trying to make Singapore more orderly for their benefit.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, so they tried to separate them in what is it? The Malays, the Indians, Chinese.
Yeah.
Then there's a mercantile area where there's a lot of trade happening up the river.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure. The plan was published in I think 1928.
Wait, 1928?
No, I mean 1828. Yeah,
Okay,
1828.
right.
So
Was these districts like was that the entirety of the plan, or was there like something more to it?
It was something that Raffles wanted, but didn't go exactly to plan because of what Fakwa did, which was he basically let the people go to the city themselves. It's I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Laissez-faire.
Oh yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
do their own thing.
Right, so they do their own thing, and
Yeah.
and when Raffles got back, it was like, what the hell are you doing? So,
Okay.
that was where there was a spat between both of them,
Okay.
and yeah, I mean the growth of Singapore was partly planned and partly self-managed back then.
Right.
And so as the years go by, even more developments were coming up. There was a need for a bridge to be built across the Singapore River. I'm sure you've seen it before, the Cavenagh Bridge.
Oh yeah.
It's a nice bridge.
Yeah.
It basically links the civic district to the mercantile center where people traded. So you can see the buildings, the colonial buildings on one side, and business buildings right now, which is on Raffles Place area.
Right, the
Yeah.
Road Key side.
Correct. So yeah, there was this bridge that was needed to be built. But I'm sure you've seen the signpost on the bridge before saying that there's no cattle,
Correct. Yeah.
or no cattle, or no horses or something
Yeah,
that's
so there's
allowed.
only this much weight that can be allowed, and horse-drawn carriages or something should not be.
And it's actually bullshit.
What?
Because it's made of it's made of I'm not sure cast iron, which were imported from Glasgow basically.
Right.
And it's a very strong bridge, but the reason why they restricted cattle and horses from crossing the bridge was that they didn't want the dirty people from the boats and the locals to actually use the bridge, because it's the place where there's the colonial buildings are, and yeah. So what they did was they say you can't do that because you have horses and carriages and stuff. So that was the reason why they had that. I think it was in mid 1800s or towards the late 1800s that they stopped that. But before that, it was fine. I mean, it's a very strong cast iron bridge.
So, like, what was the point of having the bridge? Connect these two spaces. I mean, obviously, it was about goods moving between the two spaces, right?
But I suppose by the time I think it was. Who was the resident back then? I forgot his name. It was in the other episode that we talked about.
Hamilton?
No. I forgot his name. Anyway, the guy. I suppose he didn't want a lot of locals to be using that route,
Right.
because it's too near the colonial area as well as the mercantile area.
So this is very much in line with how British colonialism, manifested itself in India too.
Yeah.
Like there were segregated areas where only the Britishers, would do their thing. It was quite common to have, restaurants and other establishments where it's like no Indians allowed. I was watching this Netflix series, which is unrelated to all of this.
Okay.
But it's like a science fiction anthology of stuff. And one of the short stories, or one of the short skits over there, was about an alternate reality in Hong Kong. And the plot's irrelative to what we're talking about right now, but there's one very interesting thing that they showed where it's like there's this Chinese fella who came from one of the villages in China, started working in Hong Kong, and he used to work the railroad in Victoria Peak. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't allowed to go up to the peak, to Victoria Peak, because that's where all the white men were. Yeah. And, as an Asian, they were not allowed there. And I'm like, motherfuckers. Yeah. Like, the Brits did the shit everywhere.
Yeah, they did. They really did. I mean, part of it is that, it's not just the use of their architecture. I mean, it's not just the use of architecture for construction, but also for as a tool of destruction, or to not just construct but also to destroy whatever that's actually been there. So
in Indian history textbooks, we actually learned this, and it has a catchphrase. It's called divide and rule.
Yeah.
So, and was this like a deliberate method that was adopted here? I mean, it's often the case where, a ruling class tends to do a lot of things by not considering what the lower classes go through. But was it systematic for British rule here? Like, did they consciously make the effort of, putting people in different boxes, or just, having that, fence of exclusivity?
I can't say for certain if it was deliberate, but I mean, the reason why the British came in the first place anyway was just driven by capitalism. So whatever that serves that purpose will happen, and whatever that does not, like the needs of the people are basically secondary. So whatever that brings in the money for them is what they'll do basically.
Okay.
So in that line, I think I don't know. I would lean towards it being systematic. I mean,
Okay.
looking at how the locals were treated back then. I think yeah, this goes off tangent from what we're talking about architecture. But I mean,
Right.
there was this book written by a scholar back then. By I think it's Said Ali Al Atas or something.
Okay.
He was talking about the myth of the lazy native. I'm not sure whether you've heard
Right.
of that.
I
Said
may
Hussein Al
have read
Atas.
something
Yeah.
about it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean he did write a whole book about it, and
Okay.
it's really interesting to see the techniques that the British used. They had scholars back then to write about the locals, but they kind of pigeonholed the locals into like stereotypes whereas like they'll say like the Malays were lazy, but the Chinese were maybe more industrious kind of people, and I mean it's kind of weird to read it. It's actually scholarly writings back then,
Okay.
but sorry,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
yeah, but what they base it on is a little bit weird because the Malays back then they had their own farms, they had their own land,
Yeah.
and they would do their own work, because I mean that's their livelihood. They had like paddy fields. They would like farm rice and all that, and that is not easy work. That is really hard work, and we are talking about about how the British said that Malays were lazy, and Chinese were industrious. What happened was that the scholars came to Singapore and they saw that the Malays refused to work for them, because there's a lot of things that the British wanted to do, like tin mining, rubber plantations, and all that sort. So these are kind of like the cash cows for the British. But the British went to the Malays and asked them if they want to work. But the Malays were like, why should we work for you? Because we have our own farms.
Okay.
We plant our own rice. We do our own cattle herding and farming and all that sort. So why should we work for you? So I mean, we don't want to work for you. On the contrary, the Chinese who left their families from China and came over to Singapore, they were looking for jobs.
Right.
So these were the people who are like willingly took up this colonial colonial made jobs
Right.
basically. So they were seen as more industrious because of their willingness to take up these jobs.
I see.
So
So essentially,
yeah.
the British were like, when the Malay folks said, "We're not going to work for you," the British turned to, "We don't want to work."
Yeah.
Is that-
And the Malays lived a bit further away from the city center, basically, and they have their own land, they have their own farms. Whenever they come over, it seems like they're just walking around, like they don't have anything to do. But most of these people actually have been living on their own sustenance.
Right.
They've been farming, they've been doing their own stuff for a long, long time. And why should we work for you when we can provide for ourselves? So basically, that's what happened, and the scholars thought like, these people don't want to work for us. Must be that they're lazy. So that's what happened, and
Very
and,
scholarly research,
yeah, exactly. And some of these were kind of like laughable to look at, but these were actually taken as fact, brought over back to the West, and
Okay.
taken as as actual fact. A lot of these people, they just come over to Singapore for a short time. They don't basically spend time with the locals. They don't live with the locals.
Yeah.
So they have a very skewed image of what the locals were, how the locals behaved, and all that sort. So it's all a very skewed kind
Yeah.
of image of what the locals were, and it's not just in Singapore. It happened here. It happened in Malaysia. It happened in the Philippines. So I would dare say, if the British came over to some other places and these things happen, it's probably the same thing that's going to happen to them. I'm not sure about India.
I honestly don't know enough, but it does make sense in that that kind of thinking was a product of its time. It was established thought at the time where the different people from different places were considered to be of greater or lesser intelligence, based on random things like the shape of their head
Yeah,
and all that.
yeah.
And I have read something, and I don't remember where exactly or what it's about. It was something to the tune of people from Africa essentially were of lower intelligence, and there were like lots of books and scholarly articles written about this. So at the time, that was the prevailing thought, and I guess I'm just trying to understand if this is something that was deliberately imposed just to establish dominion, or was it just a product of its time? In that, so it's like, let's take the example of the lazy native, right? The trope of the lazy native. Now, was this trope popularized simply because the colonial masters wanted to, justify their rule or justify their presence in the place, saying that, hey, these guys can't sustain civilization, we need to come in and do that job for them, simply because they're genetically less inclined to work?
I think it's something that is very difficult to say for sure, because it happened. There's a lot of people back then
Right.
who probably had different views on the same topic also.
Yeah.
Even among the colonial the masters.
I had a struggle, using that.
Exactly.
But there's no other one.
Colonial people.
Colonialists, I guess.
Yeah, colonialists. Yeah, I mean, I hate that term.
I had to pause, but then I will go back and try to find like a more appropriate term for it.
Colonialists. But whether or not it's systematic or something that's incidental, it's hard to say. But it all is it's a result. It's a byproduct of just chasing the money. It's all capitalism.
I mean, the example that you brought about, the thing about tin mining, where it's like essentially a certain category of people were looked upon favorably simply because they were willing to do something that would give the
benefit
benefit to the colonialists, right? So that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's, in the end, it's a question of economics.
Yeah, basically, I mean the whole I believe a big portion of the reason why the colonial the countries that did come over to all these other countries, why they did what they did is due to economic economic reasons. So that's it's really chasing after money.
I mean, that also explains why the very need for navigating to different places from that little island over there. This is not just about Britain, right? Like,
it's not just Britain. It's
like
about
most of the European
Portuguese,
countries,
Spain.
And I think the more notable example of colonialism in the Asian sphere would be imperialist Japan, which had a phase of aggressive expansion. So it isn't necessarily tied to regional culture; it's just tied to, hey guys, we just want more shit.
Exactly.
Okay. So, wow.
A lot of it. It just goes back to for the money. Basically.
Since Raffles' plan, what was what is it like to be a local person or a native living in Singapore at the time? Because you did mention something about were the British treating the natives badly. One thing that I've noticed, at least with my limited understanding of things, is that in India we always learn about how Indians were treated poorly under British rule, right? That little Netflix thing. It's Love, Death, and Robots.
Oh,
By the
is
way.
it?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty great.
I've
It's pretty
seen it.
great.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like 20 short films
Uh-huh.
about different facets of science fiction. It's pretty great. One of them has that thing about Hong Kong. So that also just made me realize that hey, there was also probably something happening like that where the British were considered higher and everybody else was considered lower, and they weren't allowed into those
Yeah,
spaces, right? Are there stories or are there accounts of people talking about this in Singapore at the time during colonial rule?
It's hard to say, but there's not many records, especially Malay writings back
Right.
then.
Okay.
Not many Malay people were inclined to do writing because back then, even Munshi Abdullah's writing was kind of it's something that's totally new in terms of Malay writing, because back then people wrote about stories.
Okay.
They don't really write about current events or what people think, or what
Okay.
people thought about what's happening. And even so, if they did, it'd probably be something that's more, I don't know, Malays, the way that Malays write and speak, it's in very layered form where meanings are hidden
Yeah.
inside
Yeah.
meanings. I mean, words. Sometimes they words and phrases, they have a lot of meaning behind them.
Okay.
Which I'm sure you found when you're reading Sejarah Melayu. Yeah. So yeah,
My favorite bits.
yeah, that's the way that Malays like to communicate back then.
Yeah.
But in terms of writing, Malay writing, I'm not sure if there was a lot of writing back then, but possibly more towards 1940s, where the war, Second World War, and after that there was a rise of nationalism, where people started thinking that maybe the British are shouldn't be here. So
Okay.
that is when there's a lot of writing about not wanting the British to be around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything in terms of atrocities committed?
Not that no. It's very interesting. I mean, compared to what we heard about what happened in India and
Yeah.
places, it's not something that we see happen in this region.
Right.
Really, I mean, I suppose what they tried to do was make everybody employed and happy,
Okay.
that they wouldn't want to disrupt whatever that we're having right now. I mean, back then, it's kind of similar to what's happening right now. Once everybody's employed, nobody wants to go out to the streets and do stuff.
Yeah. And the lizard people will still be in
Yeah,
control.
exactly. So yeah, that's what I think happened back then also. One interesting thing that they did was allowing opium and prostitution back then.
Right.
Yeah, so there was a lot of girls brought in from China and Japan actually.
Right. Okay.
I'm not sure whether you've read about it, but
I know about the opium and the lasting social legacy of
Yeah.
the opium crisis. I don't know if that's what it is. Having said this about prostitution, I'm guessing that is a thing that happens in any port city. Is
Yeah,
you have
it
like
was,
thirsty sailors all the time. So.
yeah, but it was not just for them, but also for the locals.
Right, and
I'm so sorry.
notably that sultan that you were talking about in the last episode.
Yeah. So
He had an appetite.
yeah, there was a lot of girls brought in from, especially from China and Japan, especially where Bugis Junction is right now.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
But that whole area used to be like a brothel, red light district,
Right.
kind of thing. So yeah, it's a very interesting history Bugis has had over the past 200 years, especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now it's now just a shopping mall.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, walking around, I mean, those places used to be where, yeah.
There was I remember seeing this blog or something on the internet where a photographer put up his archive of photographs.
Oh, yeah.
And it shows like Singapore in the 70s and 80s, and even as recent as then. He takes pictures. He took pictures of Bugis or what was going on at the time, and apparently there used to be this place where transvestite hookers would shove a cloth up their ass and set it on fire and dance on top of some podium or something.
Yes.
And that was apparently the highlight.
It was a wild time. There was even a movie about Bugis Street, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure whether you can find it in Singapore anymore, but yeah, it was famous for that kind of debauchery.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like I really like these gigs, transvestites. But I mean, these kind of things, I wouldn't say they are alien concept to the locals, especially.
Right.
I think even the Malays had like quite a few words to describe the different kinds of transgenders.
Right.
So
right.
I can't recall them at the moment, but I think the Bugis had like 5 different genders.
Okay.
5 different words for different genders. So yeah, I mean it's not something that's alien to Asians.
Right.
So yeah, I mean this kind of things happened back then. Now people are trying to like skirt around the issue, but it's there.
Yeah. It's I mean, there are similar conversations that happen where I come from too. It's interesting that you mentioned this because so there is a common belief in India that the sexual repression that we Indians are quite known for right now is often attributed to the Victorian values that are imposed on us by the colonialists. Now, whether that's true or not is up for question. But there's a common narrative. There's a lot of people believe that, because the argument that's often put out there is that, hey guys, we wrote the Kama Sutra. Like, how do we go from there to here?
Exactly.
Right? Which, in my opinion, is a very simplistic idea. But that's a common thing. So I'm assuming, was that something that probably also happened in Singapore too?
I think it might be. I mean, there are some values that were absorbed through the years from the West to kind of think that no, this is not right or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe it might have some. It might be guilty of some of this mindset that we had.
It's I mean, it's I've been trying to find some more well-established articles that probably delve into this and analyze it deeper. But most of it is just angsty blogs talking about it. So that's why I'm quite hesitant when I talk about this. But
it's good I mean, it's good subject matter to actually look into. Yeah.
Love to, and especially when it comes to Bugis, I do recall. So there was a movie called Saint Jack.
Yeah.
Right. So it was banned in Singapore for the longest time, and I was like, "Hey, what's the deal?" The ban, and they lifted the ban in 2007 or something, so you can still get it now. But so I started reading about it, and I started understanding the reasons for the ban. So this is based off of a book by a guy, I forget his name. So Jack Thoreau, Paul Thoreau or something.
Okay.
So he wrote a book called Saint Jack, which is about this American dude who becomes a pimp in Singapore, and this is in the 1960s or 70s, right? And then Hollywood picked it up, and then they wanted to make a movie about it, but they kind of knew that this thing wouldn't fly in Singapore because they wanted to shoot in location. So apparently, what they did was that they created a fake script, submitted it to the authorities or something like that. And they were like, "Okay, that's awesome." So the authorities gave them the green signal, gave them all the tax rebates and all that shit, for this script. They filmed the movie on location in Singapore. On location. So this is the interesting part, right? So the movie actually has scenes of Singapore from back in the day, right? So they had is it Capitol Theatre or something, or Great Wall City? I don't know which one. But it's old buildings, and all that happens, and then when the movie comes out, the authorities find out that it's about Saint Jack. So they're like, damn. So,
it's quite awesome what they did. Just to subvert whatever that's happening here. I mean, Singapore is just a small market. I mean, anyway, so wouldn't care.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think, and to be fair, I think the author and the filmmakers also, got a lot of mileage from that thing alone. So this ban may have just been
it's a Tyson effect.
Yeah, essentially, yes. So it's the authorities probably hey guys, we don't want this kind of book or movie being sold here. Just let us be. And then Hollywood goes, "Oh my gosh, we were banned."
You wore it like a badge of honor, basically. Yeah.
Right. So they got a lot of mileage out of it. So it's quite a lot of sensationalism. But,
You get to watch the movie?
sorry?
You get to watch the movie?
Bits of it. So I read the book. The book is I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest, but I kind of like it simply because when I read like a location that I know, I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
So, that was the only enjoyment I derived from it.
I think it'd be amazing to actually get to see the movie. I mean, it's like a time capsule of what Singapore used to be. So that is something that would really interest me, just to see what things looked like back then. Because I mean, especially in areas, that kind of areas where there are not many records because of obvious reasons.
Yeah. Speaking of time capsule, this is something that you can probably get to see, if you're traveling on Singapore Airlines anytime soon. There is an Indian movie, a Hindi movie, that was made, it is called Singapore.
Oh.
The name is called Singapore. So the story is about this, actor or this guy, and he has to, take care of some business. There's like a murder in Singapore, so he has to go all the way to Singapore, and he goes around and it's all that. He's like, dancing with girls. It's crazy, right? Here's my favorite part. This movie is set in 1960.
Oh. On location in Singapore.
Location, yeah.
Oh wow.
So this is a pre-independent Singapore.
Oh, that is awesome.
On video. It's black and white, but and it's available on the entertainment system in Singapore Airlines.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that soon. Yeah.
Check it out. So
is Singapore as in Singapore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Singapore.
I'll
that's
look
name.
for it. Yeah.
So it's like there's a song, where they talk about, hey, Singapore is where all the girls are at.
That is amazing. I would love to see that.
Okay, fair warning. This is a Bollywood movie, and the Bollywood movie in the 1950s and 60s were quite similar to Bollywood movies right now.
It doesn't escape from the whole.
It's like 5 hours long. There's like song and dance. There's like a lot of melodrama. So they probably exaggerated the whole thing about dancing girls and all that. But it's interesting at least in seeing what's going on over there.
I mean, being shot on location is something that's interesting. I mean, a lot of movies, especially Malay movies back then. Shot in studios, so I mean you don't really get to see a lot of what Singapore or Malaysia was like.
But wasn't Singapore the center of Malay movies, like P. Ramlee, for example?
Yeah. There was a movie studio back in Jalan Ampas in Singapore. Not only that, but there was recently I wrote about this in Reddit. I'm sure by saying this, I'm probably outing myself.
I might cut that out. I might not. Let's see.
It's okay, yeah. But there's this area called Chris Estate where there was a lot of studios. Actually, there was a Chris studio. Then they merged with Cathay, then became Cathay Chris studio. There was a lot of movies that were churned out back then in that studio. Malay movies, a lot of them were classics, and right now, if you go there, there's a lot of roads that actually have the names named after classic movies, classic Malay movies of the time. So there's like Jalan Dundang Sayang, which is like Dundang Sayang is like a Malay folk song singing kind of poem kind of thing.
Right.
So Jalan Dundang Sayang. There's I can't remember the others. There's Putri something, also named after one of the characters in a very famous movie. So that whole area is like it's the names are being kept to remind us of what the place used to be.
Wow!
So it's pretty interesting to actually go back there and see. Hey, this place is used to be a movie studio.
Where is this area again?
This is
the general location?
near. I would say it's along East Coast. East Coast. No, hang on. I think it's near Siglap area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's somewhere around there, near where the sea used to be.
So, is there any sort of memorial there? I mean, P. Ramlee was a big deal.
I don't think there was a memorial there. I don't think that I can't seem to see or find any memorials in Jalan Ampas anyway.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I need to go there and check.
Okay. So
for the Chris Estate, there's no memorial. It's basically public. I mean, it's just public housing. It's private. It's not public housing. It's private housing now.
Okay.
It's just houses, people's
Right.
houses.
Oh, so
Yeah,
so it's only the road names that remain.
yeah. The road names.
Wow.
So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
You know, side note, where can I get to watch these Malay movies? Honestly, I've seen clips of it because a lot of my Malay friends, share it as memes on Facebook. So sometimes I see that. There was this very famous one, a viral one, where it's like, it was like an old P. Ramlee movie, but the faces were replaced with the animojis from the iPhone.
Oh,
yeah, it was really funny.
yeah. If you want P. Ramlee movies, you probably can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
But for other less popular movies, when I say less popular, it's not P. Ramlee. P. Ramlee is like super popular that
Right.
you can find it on YouTube. Other than that, I think you should be able to find it at like libraries.
Okay,
National
of
Library,
course.
I think you should be able to find it.
I keep forgetting that you can get DVDs from libraries.
Yeah, exactly. So
But there are challenges though. Number one, you have to go to the library. Number two, I don't know anyone who owns a DVD reader.
you can actually watch it. You can actually watch it in the library.
Oh,
Because
okay.
They have stations there where you can
Really?
can watch. Yeah, interestingly, Esplanade Library, you can actually rent out a room to watch. It's like your own movie theater basically. So yeah, it's really
You're
interesting.
giving
Yeah.
me ideas here, and not about watching movies.
Yeah, so yeah, you have that. You have a lot of quite a few libraries now have audiovisual
Okay.
materials, so you can check that out.
Wow. Okay, I
Yeah,
definitely
I
want
mean,
to have a go at this.
if you've not been to the library at our Tampines hub, have you been there?
No.
There's a huge library, quite a quite a few floors, and yeah, they have a lot of audiovisual material also.
This is not the one at Bugis, right?
No, this is in
Tampines
Tampines.
hub,
Yeah,
okay,
our
right,
Tampines
right.
hub. In Bugis, it's huge,
Right.
but I think a lot of it is like for reference material.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
So
I should-
yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, our Tampines hub. Check it out.
I remember that I got myself a library card. I think within 2 or 3 months of
Being
first
in there.
moving to Singapore, right? And then you have this library card, and I think as a foreigner I had to pay like $50 or something.
Yeah.
But it's still a great deal because then you can you can take 8 books at a time. But as with every membership, you
just mistakes.
yeah. Or no, it's
Oh,
just,
no?
you just have the best of intentions, and then you end up never going there. So after 2 years, I was like, yeah, there's no point.
Oh no,
So, but I think I should go back and check
Yeah,
it out
it's-
again.
it's
I know it's a
worth-
treasure trove of information.
it's worth checking out. Yeah.
Um,
Especially the National Library, if you want to look at like Southeast Asian books or material, there's like a whole floor of it. I'm not sure whether it's at 7th or 9th floor or 11th floor, somewhere thereabouts. You can just enter, and there's a lot of stuff for you to check it out.
Okay. I mean, when it comes to watching those movies, I'd love to watch them. I'm guessing subtitles are there. Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think they're there. I think there's subtitles.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
just to be sure.
yeah, Malay movies. I think language is a big thing. I'm not sure whether subtitles are really give you like the whole like impact of whatever that they're saying. But I think it should suffice.
it's
Yeah,
a start.
It's a start. Yeah.
Since it was only quite recently, that I've learned that Singapore was quite the movie making center.
Yeah.
And that kind of went down, I guess. But is that trend of movie making still happening?
No, I think the movie making industry died down late 1960s. I think it followed the trend of Singapore getting independent from Malaysia.
Yeah.
So market itself shrinks so much.
Right.
Yeah. And it really died down. Malaysia now still pumps out a lot of movies.
Right.
Singapore, totally, especially Malay movies, totally died down.
Okay.
Yeah.
That actually makes sense from a market perspective because even right now in an island with only 5.5 million people, I think a lot of authors, movie makers have to deal with something that's only
Yeah,
that many
yeah,
people,
exactly.
right? Okay. Whereas like a movie that's released in India, for example, you're guaranteed on a bad day at least 50 million. So that's it puts that
It's
kind
really
of numbers into
yeah.
perspective. Okay.
I mean, that's kind of partly the reason why arts in Singapore is a little bit difficult to sprout wings.
I mean, if you want, I mean, the way I see it, like there's two ways of dealing with art, right? One is to use it as a means of expression, and the other is to do it enough to sustain a livelihood, right? The second part, I think, is a limitation in Singapore.
It is really difficult. Yeah.
But thankfully, with the internet and all that, creating art and expressing oneself or expressing one's ideas have become significantly easier. So you can see that changing and becoming a lot more. What's the word? It's spreading out a lot more. Simply because
I think it's more exciting for us to see, definitely to see more locals finding their voice and finding fame overseas, especially. Nowadays we have, we used to have like Aaron Aziz going to Malaysia and making a name for himself. Now we have like Faka Faz going to the US, and it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome to see our brand of humor being. It's amazing.
I saw this little clip on Facebook that he or someone else shared, I guess, where he's talking about Malay, what's that? So, but that is actually pretty good.
It's really good.
In fact, I think a lot of Singaporean comedians are making quite a name for themselves overseas. So there's Jinx Yeo, this Chinese guy. So he went viral because of this one clip about colonialism. So it's like, just watch it if you have the chance. It's actually pretty funny. So now, ever since then, every comedy show that he goes to, it's always like Jinx Yeo, the Asian nerd who talks about colonialism. Then there's also this Singaporean Indian comedian, Rishi Budrani.
Okay.
So he's quite known in the Southeast Asian circles because he goes to Malaysia, Indonesia, and he does comedy gigs there. So it's like, and Australia, of course, So that's growing quite.
Yeah, I think it's great, especially with YouTube and whatever video streaming services that you have. You really reach a really wide audience with very minimal setup needed. You just have to have. It's not putting it easy. Like, it's definitely not easy to get to where you are.
It's like the hoops that somebody has to jump to be known.
Few hoops.
Correct. Yeah. Although, like, even in the film space, for example, so a couple of years ago, we went to see The Apprentice.
Okay.
It is a fantastic movie. So it's about this guy who becomes an apprentice to a hangman.
Oh, yes, that one.
And it gets really intense, Okay. So there are some. So we went to watch it in the projector, and I don't know if there was something wrong with subtitles or something like that. So like it's spoken with a mix of English and Malay. So there were some parts that I couldn't really get.
Oh no!
But it was really fantastic, very intense. It got like multiple awards overseas.
I missed that one. I wanted to watch it, but I somehow I missed it.
There is another one that actually got a lot of accolades.
Ilo Ilo?
Not Ilo Ilo. This one is A Land Imagined.
That
came out this year, and it came to the projector again. So we're like, okay, let's check it out. See what the deal is. So we start watching it, and it's like, okay, no spoilers, but it's about, so there's a construction worker from China who disappeared in, one of the construction sites. So a Singaporean police officer comes to, investigate, find out what the deal is. And then it's like, the Singaporean officer is finally seeing what it's like to live life as a construction worker. But then it gets quite interesting, like, it's, for the lack of a better word, kind of bizarre. So, like, we went out of the movie like, what the fuck happened? But apparently it was very well received among the art house circles. So,
okay.
So a lot of people compared it to, it's like the Singaporean David Lynch, who's known for bizarre movies and shit like that. So I'm like, okay, so definitely not my kind of thing. But it's interesting to see that, that's growing a lot more.
Up,
So, and at least for me, YouTube, for example, is a great channel, and although I'm not a big fan of the major YouTubers.
Yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily a Singaporean thing. It's just like any of the top YouTubers in any country are
Kind of
garbage.
like lowest denominator.
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
exactly.
Like,
Yeah. So it's like, three things that you got to do if you're a student, some shit like that. And like in India, we have like similar YouTubers. It's just the worst, and they use the same fucking tactics. They use all the keywords that make the most money, and
screenshots that
yeah.
show the
yeah,
goods.
yeah, pretty much. It's like tits everywhere. That's just how it is. And I'm like, okay, this sucks.
Yeah. I skip those. I yeah, but but there are some gems definitely coming out. I'm not sure whether you saw Shirkers.
Haven't yet.
Netflix.
Yeah, I want to. Like, it's interesting because at least from what I was reading about it, it's not just a movie; it's a movie about the movie.
Yeah,
right?
it's bizarre. It's kind of bizarre also, but it's got its charm.
Okay.
There's a lot of footage of Singapore from I think 1980s.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting. There are like twists and turns in the movie, but
Okay.
it kind of like is a bit slow but bizarre enough to just keep you glued watching it. It's like okay.
Okay, maybe I should check it out because I know I didn't see it.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. Like, does it take you back to what it was like? I mean, 1980s is probably a little too far.
It's not too far. It's not too far back. But what was happening back then? Because this is a film by this girl who was like she just loves making film and do artsy stuff. And he basically she met a guy who kind of like took her under his wing. He said that he's a filmmaker, but back then it's very difficult to kind of verify these kind of things.
Right.
So it's kind of mysterious what happened to this guy, what happened to the footage of the film, kind of thing. And that's basically what the movie is about. And this girl tries to like trace whatever that happened.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's definitely worth a watch, I think.
I will check it out. I
Yeah.
definitely should. It's I have had a conversation with some people where it's like somebody feels that there are no movies in Singapore simply because they haven't seen any, they haven't read about any, and they're too busy like watching movies from their hometown. That's what they're like. And what makes you say with such authority that there are no movies in Singapore? But yeah,
I think you'll need to seek them out.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it, you have to see. I mean, it's great that we have the projector to like kind of like bring up all these local movies. I think I watched. There are a couple of local movies that I watched, like Ilo Ilo.
okay, I haven't seen that one. I should.
Ilo Ilo is pretty good. I think it won at Cons or something.
Okay.
I can't remember whether they actually won or they were nominated for that. There was also one on Lucky Plaza.
Oh,
Have
okay.
you watched that?
No,
it's
I haven't.
pretty interesting. It's
I haven't
about
heard of it.
I kind of vaguely remember the movie. It's pretty weird. It was about this guy who had a store in Lucky Plaza,
Okay.
and basically shit goes down. There are guns involved, kind of thing. So
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
so yeah,
Action movie?
there's kind of it's not exactly action, but it kind of tapers to a point where there's guns involved.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I should check it out. I'm hoping
and Lucky
that.
Plaza is pretty cool. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that these movies are also available in the library.
I definitely hope so. Speaking of which, I'm not sure if you've watched Seven. I mean, we are totally detracted from what we initially talked about.
That's the nature of the medium.
But Seven Letters. If you've not watched it yet, you have to watch it. It's really good Singaporean filmmaking. Seven Letters basically is like 7 love letters from 7 different directors of Singapore.
Okay.
So each one would have like a few minutes of storytelling. They tell a story about like filmmaking or whatever. So it's amazing to see the different styles of different famous Singapore directors.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's like Royston Tan. There is I think Jack Neo is also in it.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. I think some of them are pretty really tugs your heartstrings. It's pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure you can find it in like Kinokuniya or something, but I saw that they were selling the box set for like super expensive.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether you can find it cheaper anywhere else, but you should definitely look out for Seven Letters.
Okay.
Yeah.
That said, are these kind of movies available in the library? I mean, just-
I'm not sure because I mean for the Seven Letters one, they were selling it in stores, so I mean they were selling it for like pretty expensive.
Yeah,
I'm not sure whether you can find it, but it's worth a shot. I mean you can probably
Okay.
check it out. Probably check it out after this.
yeah, because that's what I want to do, right? Because like
Yeah.
it's not so easy to generally get movies online, but you know when it comes to local movies, and you know
It's even more difficult.
It's hard.
It's more. Yeah.
So, and I don't have too much of a budget to go around and buy every single book. Like Kinokuniya is expensive. Like holy
Yeah, yeah.
shit. but yeah, that's,
I mean, if you are lucky enough, some festivals might air Seven Letters.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I watched it once in the lawn of National Museum. They were airing Seven Letters for some reason. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean it's definitely something to look out for if they are airing it. Otherwise, I think maybe check the libraries.
Okay.
Or bookstores. Yeah.
There was one time where we got to see an anthology of horror films that was being screened during Halloween or something. So it was at the Art Station, Timber Substation.
Substation.
Substation, yes.
Substation. Yeah.
Right? So they had this thing where they were playing this and all that, and they were like, in light of, the Halloween, so it was like a bunch of Singaporean filmmakers who did like, short skits and horror and all that. Some were like really, really fucking scary.
Yeah, I think it's something that's people who say that Singapore don't have talent. I mean, doing this kind of filmmaking, I think they're really mistaken because I think we have a lot of talent. I mean, we have a lot of restrictions, but the filmmakers were able to get around these restrictions. Get around the limitations of budget and the sort. It's pretty amazing to see.
There are a lot of artists who subscribe to the school of thought that creativity comes with constraint.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It depends of context for sure. But I guess what I feel is that the marketing machine is not big enough for these kind of artists to be
to
known
really make
outside
it,
of that's the thing. So
It's tough. It's tough. If you're not MediaCorp, then it's tough.
And it's also hard. I mean, not just MediaCorp, but like when you're trying to market your Hindi horror movie at a time when Avengers marketing machine is in full swing, like those guys just go all out.
Exactly.
So I don't think you can beat the Hollywood marketing machine, and that kind of sucks. And I see that everywhere. So it's like the average viewer in Singapore, otherwise, just sees more of Marvel than they would see of anything else. So, which is why I kind of like it when there's the go local movements, which is pretty great. I remember in my state in India, in Kerala, it was a big problem, not just from Hollywood. Like there's so much marketing from Hollywood. Like it was everything. They were sponsoring everything. So of course we're gonna talk about their movie, right? And you know that Bollywood is really big in India, right? So the dominant language in Bollywood is Hindi, and in Kerala we speak Malayalam, right?
Okay.
And so there's generally a feeling that Bollywood is taking over our filmmaking, like to the point where local filmmakers are understanding that hey, the average Malayali likes to watch Bollywood movies. So the way that Malayalis have started making their own movies is starting to copy like elements from Bollywood.
styles,
Yeah, exactly. So so we're seeing this in both fronts. On the one hand, you have the onslaught of Bollywood, on the other, you have the onslaught of Hollywood, and then it's like, what about our scene, man? And there's a lot of struggle that goes on over there. So
I think this happens everywhere. I mean, Singapore especially also. It's basically a culture war.
Yeah.
How do you enjoy other people's work without like abandoning your own?
Yeah.
So it's a struggle. It's very difficult, but I think now more than ever we are getting a voice of our own.
Yep.
And that's something that that's optimistic and something I think we should hold on to. I mean,
For sure.
we should definitely I think that there are recently a lot more movements of trying to reflect towards what we are as Singaporeans and try to embrace it. So that's exciting. But I mean, in terms of culture, it's not something that's um, stagnant. It's not something that's set in stone. It'll always be like that. I think it's always evolving.
Yeah.
So while we can try to hold on to whatever that we were in the past, it's also going to be interesting to see or try to predict what we're going to be in the future. So that's
For sure.
it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah.
And for this, I will say, God bless the internet. If it weren't for that, I swear, the culture war would have been very different. The ability to have voices come together and say that, hey, we actually have this thing going on. That actually has changed a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of stupid things that happen on the internet, but this is one of the better ones. Just a quick note, right now there's also a buy singlet campaign going on. So it's if you go to the Times bookstore, for example, you can get 20% off if it's by a local author.
That's cool.
Yeah, so quite recently...
Times bookstore.
We went to one of Plaza's thing, but it's part of the hashtag buy singlet campaign. So I'm assuming it's going to be in other ones also. So I was buying some books as a prize for a game that we were doing. I guess I might as well tell you this is an interesting one. So a couple of weeks ago, so there's two friends of mine who love doing adventure games.
Okay.
So it's Amazing Race, right? Where you play, you just find clues and then go around different places and find that, right? So there's two friends who love doing it. And so quite recently, they were like, hey, we want to do this Amazing Race game, but we want to build a story around it. So then, we're just talking. So they roped me in and we're just talking, just random conversations over beer. And then we're like, hey man, let's make it about, so the point of the game was that we wanted the people and our extended friend circle to know more about Singapore than, the average, tired, washed out narrative, right? So we were looking at places that just seemed, it's not significant, but not talked about a lot. For example, there's the fort in Katong Park. In the middle of Katong Park is a thing, right? Nobody knows about it, but it's an interesting thing because it's right in the middle of the park, right? So we talk about this, right? So we wanted to build a story around it. Why would a bunch of these guys go around Singapore to find these places, right? So we were like, hey man, let's make a story about, and then it ended up being, Sangnala Uttama, was sucked into a time portal and then
came out there
in 2019. And so we built this whole story around it, a bunch of guys in Singapore in the 33rd century built a quantum teleportation device. Something went wrong. The time portal opened up in 1299. Sangnala Uttama was sucked in and went to 2019. And so we are time cops and we're supposed to go in there and take him back to his timeline, or else Singapore will not exist.
That is cool.
And it is really fun. It was really fun. So,
how many beers in were you in?
We were like, bro. And so those guys were doing this and all that, and then we made a comic about it, and then put it out there.
Cool, yeah.
And so but it is really fun, and we got people to go around and do that thing. I'll probably send you the sheet of clues that we had.
Oh, that is awesome.
But because so we wanted to give a gift for the folks who won, and so I was just going around Times Square and I found these graphic novels by Cheese Swain, I forget his name, but it's a graphic novel. And while I was buying it, the bookstore guys, oh, you're buying local, 20% off.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, that's great. So then, as part of it, I thought it was 20% off for everything, but then I had another book which is not a Singaporean book.
Oh, okay.
And then he was like, yeah, no 20% for that. It's just for local book. So yeah, once again, I think that was what I wanted to say, 20% off for local books.
So, 20% off, the one that you bought, was it the Art of Charlie?
I did buy that also, and I got 20% off for that also, but this other graphic novel was Tembaru. It's a love story set in 19th century Singapore. A prince fell in love with a commoner girl, and at the time that was not allowed, and so they were ready to elope. But then that's when the British came in and just changed everything.
Oh man! Interesting premise. Yeah.
So they have that. It's actually pretty good. So check it out. I did buy The Art of Charlie Chanchakai, but Didn't get around to reading it.
You have to.
Is it?
It is pretty. You haven't even started it yet.
Yeah, no, because like, I bought the book and it's like I didn't realize it was
It is
that
really
big.
thick.
Yeah.
It's thick, but it's got so much soul in it. I think it's really amazing to see this kind of work being published in Singapore. I think it's one of the more important and easy to read book about Singapore that you can find nowadays.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard about all about the book.
Yeah, I mean the controversy, especially.
The controversies,
That was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Although I did just do a brief look through and all that, I really like the art, and I've noticed that there's like different styles.
Different styles. He's pretty talented. I think he. I'm not sure whether he drew for Marvel or DC.
Okay.
So he's a pretty prolific artist by any standard. I think he's based in US or something.
Okay.
So the art itself is amazing. The stories in the book are also quite interesting.
Okay.
It's kind of like looking at the growth of Singapore in the eyes of a Singaporean living through that time.
Right.
As a Singaporean artist living through the times, how Singapore was changing, where was his place in Singapore. There were a lot of analogies. There was a bit of a story about like the sunken jail, the mouse deer.
Oh, right.
Kind of thing.
Okay.
He kind of put everything in, and it's really well done. You should definitely read it.
I will. I definitely should. Like, I was just browsing around and I saw that book. I'm like, oh yeah,
You
okay,
have to.
I have to check it out. Okay, I will. I realized that I didn't know that he was not living in Singapore because he seemed quite in tune with what's happening in Singapore in general. Because I started following him on Facebook, and there's one picture that is very popular of his quite recently. And like right after the select committee of deliberate online falsehoods. He drew a caricature of Minister Shanmugam.
And the dog. Yeah. Oh, that was ballsy. That was ballsy. I like that.
So I was like, okay, so he knows what's up. Like he knows what's going on and all that. So yeah, I think we can just.
We have 1 minute remaining.
Oh shit! Okay, so in that case, it's kids' play. All right, so thank you, Hafiz, for coming down for Living Up in Line City again.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.
It's awesome.
There's always something to talk about. I mean, we totally derailed from our initial intention of talking about architecture.
It's all good. At the end of the day, I think I have like a whole list of things that I need to do. There's a lot of homework. I definitely want to watch all those movies, and I definitely want to take advantage of that, personal cinema theater. Use it as my library. But okay, thank you, Hafiz. Guys, thank you for listening to this episode. Once again, follow us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. If you have a podcast app of your choice, we are most definitely on it. Hafiz, thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is Rindo signing out, and you are listening to Living It Up in Line City. Peace out.
Bye-bye.